Chun. Now I have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Vicky Chun. Ms. Chun was named Colgate University's Director of Athletics and Associate Professor in 2013. In 2015, she was promoted to Vice President and Director of Athletics. Ms. Chun is the only female athletic director in the Patriot League. Out of the 245 Division I institutions, she is one out of 29, one out of 8 minority females actively leading an NCAA Division I athletic department. She's also a member of she's the president of the NCAS organization for the 2016-2017 year. Dedicated to the overall success of her student athletes, the Raiders ranked third in the nation with a 98% graduation rate. In 2011, she received the prestigious Maroon Citation Award. An alum of Colgate University, she double majored in political science and education. Please help me welcome Ms. Vicky Chun.
I appreciate that introduction. That's one of the best introductions of myself I've ever heard. So it's not going to take 15 minutes because you just about heard all of it. I want to just thank all of you for coming and being so well dressed. I mean, I could honestly hire all of you right on the spot. I feel like I'm at a division meeting with a lapel pin right here. That's impressive. I only learned the lapel pin thing about 5 years ago. So well done. I also want to thank Dr. Levchek. I've been a huge fan. I still have my notes from the MVP program back when we were at Northeastern. And Delise and I go way back. I feel that when I meet the staff, you're with the A team, and that's quite remarkable. My staff was very excited for me to be here, and then they heard that it was going to be live, and then all of a sudden they were all of a sudden really quiet because you just never know what I'm going to say. Saying that, watching, listening, and seeing those numbers, wow, there's a lot more pressure on me to keep my job, or else I'm going to screw up the whole statistics. But when I saw it, it made me think. When I see the esteemed panelists, Chris Rock, I'm sure you've heard of him. He's doing stand-up. See, my staff is cringing right now. And he talks about his neighborhood, right? And he's living in a really nice neighborhood, but then he looks around him, and the minorities in his neighborhood, like Beyonce, Eddie Murphy, himself, and then, he said his neighbor's a dentist. Well, I'm here representing the dentist. I'm an example of that. All of you can be ADs, you can be CEOs, whatever you want to be. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of connection, but the connection starts here. Most of my connections and where I've been and what keeps me in this job are my teammates, are the people that I'm sitting right next to. And if you have an opportunity, I would take these two women to lunch. I'm sure they're very busy, but I would give that opportunity because they're right here. Take every opportunity to get to know people because that's how it gets done. My story, born in California, my parents knew nothing about athletics. In fact, when I was an assistant coach, head coach, doing a full-time job, my parents would still send me, one ads from the LA Times. And then I got a job at the NCAA, and they were so pleased. I mean, they were so proud. I would go to family reunions, gatherings, and they were so excited. And I said, wow, I didn't know it would take the NCAA. They're like, the NCAA? I said, yeah. They said, your parents have been telling us you've been working for the NAACP. So, just to give you a background of my family, there you go. So, I played varsity athletics at Colgate. I told them I'm like a bad penny. I kind of left and came back. And, just never say never. When I was at Colgate, I said I'm never, ever going to take a job where I'm in a suit. So then I said, I want to go into the business world. I want to be, I wanted to be part of before there was internet and email. I wanted to be that cool person in the jeans and start my own company. And I said, never, ever do I want to go into coaching because I saw how hard they work and how hard it is. So I went to coaching at Cornell University for nothing. And I really, really loved it, though. And people always wondered, do you miss coaching? Why did you go into administration? And honestly, when I was a kid, I was more interested in setting up the games than actually being in the games. I know, weird, right? So I explain a lot here, but I really, really enjoyed, and when we went to University of Wisconsin to play in the first rounds for a volleyball program, I loved how everything was done for a women's team. I didn't get that experience. I did notice that the gender differences until I got a job and I started working in coaching and seeing the difference and seeing that there's an opportunity here for our women's student athletes and our male student athletes that weren't, say, involved in basketball and football to get a phenomenal experience with just a little bit of organization, enthusiasm, and passion. So I took an NCAS internship. I was the oldest intern by far, and this is me coming right off of Coach of the Year, full-time job, and the NCAA gave me that opportunity, and I loved it. People always ask, where did it start? For me, for administration, it was there. I met all my friends there. I had my contacts there. And we really, at that time, graduate assistantships, graduate school. This was just starting, and I honestly had never heard of it, so this was my time for me to learn the hard way and the best way possible. I wanted to try everything. I was a head coach of a Division I program at Colgate when I was 24, so I really felt, boom. I wanted to look into administration when I could take a little bit of taste of everything, because there's a lot of things, right? There's championships, there's marketing, there's compliance. I knew I wasn't going into compliance after coaching, but those are the things that you figure out. And I had that opportunity. I did everything. I did rifle championships, really different. I did compliance. I did marketing. I did all those sorts of things, and that really helped me. And I asked everyone questions, and it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun too. So from there, I wanted to go into. I wanted to try Division III, and not try. I wanted to experience it, and I wanted to experience all three divisions. So I went. I applied and got a Division III commissioner job for the New York State Women's Athletic Association, and absolutely loved it. Had the opportunity to go back to my alma mater to be the assistant AD and in an interim basis. So that was, again, another opportunity for me to check it out and see if I liked it or not, and then maybe go that route instead of a conference route, because they are two different experiences. And, I stayed at Colgate, and I want to let everyone know, like, my opportunities all came from white men. They hired me. To get me to stay and do a really good job, it took a lot of women and a lot of minority women and minorities and my white male friends as well. But, when you look at it, I didn't realize until I was at the NCAA the gender differences or color differences. I just realized, I had no idea. I had a sweet mate, Arthur Hightower, and we would have to go really, really early to set up everything. And he was always an hour early. And I'm like, what are you doing? The lights aren't even on. It's 5 a.m. I'm thinking I'm full, getting there at 6 a.m. It doesn't start till 9. He said, well, Vicky, there is a stigma out there for if I'm late, if I'm a second late, I'm done. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. But you know what? I did. I figured it out. And I understood. And those are the things that, for me, it was a lesson in everything, especially when I'm doing hires or when I meet someone. There are a lot of things that people take on without anyone knowing. And so that's where I got a lot of my education. And, they tell you never to be an interim AD if you want the AD job. And I wanted the AD job, so I took the interim. And it was about a 6-month interview process. By the time it was the day of the interview, I had it made. I wasn't tired at all. I was ready to go. And, a lot of people will talk to you on how to get the job, but you have to go to the people that you trust. You have to go back to your notes. You have to go back to everything, because when the time comes, that's who you seek out, because that's who you trust. I got the opportunity, and people ask me, did you always want to be a director of athletics? And I have to say no. I'm one of those statistics that when they wrote, what do you want to be? I wanted to be behind the scenes. I wanted to be a senior associate. I didn't want to be the CEO. I would love to be the COO. And finally, I was talking to a lot of senior women's administrators, and they're like, who became ADs, and they're like, I don't know why women don't want to become the AD. It says, look at the work you're doing now. It's actually less work than that, and you get to make decisions of, you complain about this and that. You're actually in a place where you can make it, and you have to own those decisions, but you're in the chance to have that opportunity to do it. So after that conversation, I said, you know what? Yeah, let's give it a try. Let's give it a shot. And no one wants a blog written about you. No one wants your face out there when you're doing something maybe unintentional, but it's worth the risk. Do it. And I love that there are a lot of men and women here who want the AD job. I think it's fantastic. Don't forget to do your own job first, and then go there. I meet a lot of people want to be the AD now, and I said, well, graduate from college first, and then give it a try. But that is the type of thing that women just, I want to encourage. Go for it. Go for it. You will get to coach the Olympic team. You will get, honored in the Hall of Honor. These are things that are attainable. You just have to want it and want it bad. I'm just going to close with, I'm going into my 5th year as the Director of Athletics and Vice President at Colgate University. I love every bit of it. It's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also the best and most precious experience I could ever have as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So next on the panel, we have Ms. Nnenna Akotaobi, who is currently the Associate AD of the Title IX Deputy Coordinator in the SWA at what she calls Swarthmore College. Swarthmore or Swarthmore?
Either. Don't ask me. I'm not Swarthmore purist, but I think it's close. Yeah.
She previously held positions as the Coordinator for Diversity and Inclusion at College, and also worked in athletic and event facility management. She was previously the Director of Championships and Assistant to the Commissioner at the Midwest Conference. She was a standout basketball student athlete and graduated from the University of Denver. She's also a member of numerous committees, including the NCAA Minority Interest Committee, and also a member of NACA, which we've heard a lot of the ladies discuss earlier. So please help me and welcome Ms. Akotaobi.
Thank you, good morning. I feel like a woman among giants on this panel. A bit intimidating, but I'm thrilled to be here. When you talk about network, I'm thinking about the moment when we met last spring and you said, I got something for you. And that's the value of a network. And I've been fortunate to be the beneficiary of an incredible network of champions. I don't call the folks that I consider mentors, I call them champions because they've championed for me. I also would not be sitting here if not for the NCAA. People have a lot to say about the association, but I am the direct beneficiary of every effort they've made to increase the pipeline, to create opportunities for women and ethnic minorities, for young people, for young professionals. I've been the direct beneficiary of every single one of those programs, and I would not be sitting here today if not for the association. I'm also thrilled to be sitting up here representing Division III. Swarthmore College is a small Division III liberal arts college right outside of Philadelphia. Many folks don't know, though Division I is the most visible, Division III represents 40% of participating student athletes. We are the largest division. So we have the greatest opportunities, and yet Division III represents the smallest number of ethnic minorities and women in the association. I believe believe the number of ethnic minority women who are in athletic administrative positions are probably not even a percentile that's worth mentioning, which is unfortunate, but it also alludes to the fact that there's great opportunity available at the Division III level. A lot of times when you talk to young people and they say, I want to work in athletics, I want to be the athletic director at Ohio State. Well, that's great. But you can be the athletic director at Swarthmore College, too, and there's a lot of opportunity at that, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. My story is a bit unconventional. I was a late bloomer. I didn't start participating in athletics until I was about 14 or 15 years old in middle school and high school. I am the daughter of Nigerian immigrants. My story of being a first-generation immigrant is probably typical of most immigrant stories. My parents had high expectations, and I was to meet them because they did not come to this country for me to be a failure. So I grew up with 2 older brothers and a little brother who I tried to emulate in everything that they did. I like to tell folks I grew up in a family of geniuses, engineers, healthcare professionals, and I work in athletics, so I think it's pretty equal. But I wanted to emulate everything my brothers did. So they were in the band, I wanted to be in the band too. My second oldest brother ran track, so I was going to run track too. So I ran track, and I was fortunate to have a great champion. His name was Michael Granderson, and he was my track coach. And he saw a lot of potential in somebody who had never played sport before. And he said, you know what, you can play basketball. I'm 14, barely ever touched a basketball. I said, sure, why not? So he taught me the game of basketball. And I don't think, I was very flattered in that introduction that said I was a standout basketball student athlete. I think it's very generous. I was a pretty average basketball student athlete, but I was an athlete. And my coach always said I can turn any athlete into a sport player. Can't put every sport player into an athlete, but I can do vice versa. So he showed a lot of belief in me, mentored me, taught me a lot about leadership, taught me a lot about confidence, taught me a lot about speaking up and speaking out. So that was my first foray into the value of believing in people and developing young people. So I really hold that true to this day. One of the things he would always say is, I'm direct, I'm competitive, but I'm always going to believe in you. So that's one of my mantras I carry on today. So because he believed so much in me, I was able to earn the opportunity to be a Division I student athlete. And I really decided I needed to venture out. So I went to school 15 minutes from where I grew up and went to the University of Denver and had an incredible experience, but it was quite a culture shock for me. The University of Denver is a predominantly white institution, private school in the suburbs of Denver. I went to a really diverse high school, so walking into an institution and seeing the lack of diversity was quite a shock, and it made for a challenging undergraduate experience. But the University of Denver is also home to a great administration. One of those leaders being Peg Bradley's office, who is currently the director of athletics there. Talk about a powerful woman, that's Peg. And she had a vision for her athletic department, which was really diverse. And she was also one of the first to hire a position at the time, I believe it was called the Associate Athletics Director for Diversity and Community Relations. A gentleman named Tony Daniels, who came in and really worked hard to support the ethnic minority student athletes at the University of Denver and make our experience robust, and kind of sparked my interest in diversity and inclusion in higher education. So I engaged in a lot of that work as an undergrad. I was a little mini social justice superhero when I was an undergraduate student, and I loved that work, and I thought, I'm going to work in diversity and inclusion. That's the work I'm going to do in my career. I was also fortunate to be mentored by some tremendous women at the University of Denver, Cindy Nagai, who's now the SWA at the University of Denver, who really said, we believe in you, you have great leadership skills, we think you can work in athletics, and we think you can give back. So my career goal was to attain a job that allowed me to work in diversity and work in athletics, and was the culmination of everything. I applied for a lot of jobs coming out of undergraduate, and I was able to get an offer at a job at the Midwest Conference as the Director of Championships and Assistant Commissioner, with a focus on doing diversity advocacy work for the conference. Didn't know anything about the Midwest Conference, didn't know anything about Division III, but decided to pack my bags and move to rural central Wisconsin. And I remember this very distinctly, because I remember my interview. My commissioner picked me up, Chris Graham. We got in the car, we started driving, drive through Milwaukee, see all the lights, see a different city. I was thrilled. And then the lights went away, and we were just on highways, and it was dark. And I actually remember texting my brother saying, this man is kidnapping me. Something is happening. You call 911. We got to central rural Wisconsin, a town of less than 10,000, and I loved it. I loved it because Chris Graham, who I also consider one of my champions, really was passionate about diversity and inclusion, was passionate about bringing a young woman of color to this town and saying you can have an impact not only on our conference and our member institutions, but in this community as well. He embraced me and mentored me. One of the benefits of working in Division 3 is it was a 3-person office, so I did everything. I did compliance, I did championships, I sold T-shirts. But I also, again, had a great champion in Chris who said, you might be selling T-shirts this week, but next week you're going to walk into a room with presidents. And you need to be able to command their attention, and you need to be able to deliver this presentation, and you need to do it professionally. Good luck. And he really believed in me and empowered me to be able to adapt to any situation I'm in. And I gained a lot of experience working in that capacity, so I'm very grateful to him. I'm also grateful because that position, again, was created by Division 3's Ethnic Minority and Women Internship Grant. Division 3 awards grants to member institutions and conferences to specifically hire women and ethnic minorities and give them professional internships, well-paid internships where they're going to have significant responsibility, where they have facilitated mentorship, where they have forced professional development. They want you to be the best that you can be. So I had a mentor in Portia Hoyes, who's now the athletic director at Allegheny College, another Division 3 institution, and I knew seeing her that I wanted to be her. I wanted to emulate everything she did. At the time, she was the Associate AD SWA at Lake Forest College. But seeing her path, she was also the beneficiary of this same grant, and seeing her path and how she advanced in her career, I said, that's what I want to do. So, having been at the conference office level, you get the opportunity to engage with your member institutions, of which we had 10. One of those member institutions reached out to me and said, hey, we have this position, again, funded by a different NCAA grant that allows us to hire ethnic minorities and women, and we want you to come in and do diversity and inclusion work in our athletics department. And here I am thinking back to my experience as an undergrad and Tony Daniel and Peg Bradley Dockers and the vision they had and the position they created, and I said, wow, having that position in Division 3, how powerful is that? So I decided to pursue that position, and I moved to rural Iowa in a town of less than 10,000, and I did diversity work, and it was an incredible experience. Worked for Grinnell College, which is a small liberal arts college in Iowa, incredibly diverse community, incredibly diverse town in rural Iowa. And it was a powerful experience. It allowed me to do the work that I was passionate about and get a tremendous amount of experience. At Grinnell, I got to be an assistant coordinator for a facility, a $90 million facility that was just built right after I arrived there. So I got every experience in engaging in facility management, managed national championships, managed all types of events. I got a broad range of experiences there as well. You can see the theme here in Division 3 is we wear a lot of hats and we do a lot of work. But that work has allowed me to really pursue other opportunities based off the experiences I'm now able to put on my resume. While I was at Grinnell, I also was appointed to the Minority Opportunities and Interest Committee, which is an association-wide committee comprised of Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3 administrators and coaches who come together to talk about issues across the association and how they impact ethnic minorities, women, the LGBT community, and the like. So from there, I pursued the position I am in now at Swarthmore College, where I'm the Associate Director of Athletics. Again, and have a great champion in my director, Adam Hertz, who has really believed in me, empowered me, given me autonomy, and said, I trust that you're going to do the best job that you can do. Now do it. You always have to be able to do the work, but if you have champions and people who believe in you and support you, it's easy. My career has been easy because I've had a lot of folks that have believed in me. In terms of the work that I currently do with the association, not only am I now the chair of that committee, the Minority Opportunities and Interest Committee, I also serve on Division 3's Management Council. Division 3 Management Council is the largest governing body of our division. Division 2 also has a management council. So I'm the youngest person on that council. I'm one of the few people of color on that council, but it has empowered me to be able to understand better the functionality of our division, how to advocate for what we need across the association, but it's also for personally, it's expanded my network. I'm on that committee with presidents, directors of athletics, deans, vice presidents, coaches, peers, colleagues, a tremendous group of people who are all there with a common goal. And again, when I talk about mentors being champions, it's not enough to just call somebody a mentor. You have to have relationships with them. And I know that I have folks, whether they're presidents of colleges or they're SWAs like me, that I can text or I can call and I can say, I need your support, and they'll support me because I've been able to cultivate those relationships. But again, I haven't been able to cultivate those relationships if not for the opportunities that I've had before me. And those opportunities have been created because of Division 3's hard work and reaching out and trying to get more women and ethnic minorities into the pipeline. So I always encourage folks who are considering careers in athletics to think about Division 3. We don't say we go down to Division 3, we go over to Division 3. The opportunities are endless and tremendous. You will learn a lot. And I think it'll set you up for a lot of different things in your career, no matter what you aspire to. They always say end with a quote. So, my favorite quote is, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of equal or greater benefit. I believe that's by Napoleon Hill. I like that quote because it speaks to the challenges that you're always going to encounter in your professional career, but understanding that those challenges are leading you to ultimately successes, and they're teaching you something, and they're opening doors to something. And again, I think my story is aligns well with that quote. I've had challenges. I've moved to the middle of nowhere. I've lived across and away from my family. I've lived in towns of 9,500 white people who look at you kind of side-eyed, but I've learned a lot from those experiences. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. I certainly encourage you all to be open-minded when you think about careers and what you're willing to do and what you're willing to pursue to achieve your goals. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nnenna. And last but certainly not least, we have Delise, who would be Executive Director of NCAS. Delise, like I said, is Executive Director of NCAS. Is a graduate of Morgan State University and her JD and her MBA from Indiana University. She was born in Jamaica and was a standout tennis player growing up. Also a former collegiate player as well. Prior to coming to NCAS, she worked at NCAA where she oversaw the work committees. She had a very heavy social justice influence in her work. Some of the other things that she does now is she's the Vice President of the U.S. International University Sports Federation. That's also the first Vice President of the Pan American University Sports Federation. Some of her favorite accomplishments that she has obtained and worked in is she was actually the Deputy Head of Delegation for Team USA at the 2013 World University Games. Outside of her work, she spends a lot of time with her daughters, Cameron and Katie, who are also going to be standout tennis players as well. And so, please help me welcome in. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Do we need a quick stand break? We've been sitting for a while. Everyone stand for 10 seconds. Actually, I think I'm going to stand and speak. I'm the last speaker. Okay, everyone, please be seated. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. So thank you for that introduction. So I'm a 48-year-old Caribbean American woman with roots in the sunny island of Jamaica. As Juan said, I have an MBA in law degree. I've worked in leadership roles in collegiate sport nationally and internationally for 25 years. 17 of those years were spent in the NCAA national office. And when I reflect on my career, I can almost count on my hand the number of women of color in sports leadership that I have encountered along the way. And growing up in Jamaica, I was part of majority culture, and some people may take that for granted in this country, but what that meant for me
was the opportunity to have role models, to see people who looked like me in leadership positions, and to believe very early in my life that I could also achieve. I came to the United States in the late 1980s. I had 2 suitcases and $500, and maybe a dream. I just really wasn't sure what that dream was. I spent a couple of years working in New York City, and we talked about culture shock earlier. For me, the culture shock was huge. You know, I came from an easygoing culture. I was on the beach once a week, and then I was in this huge, great city with these buildings that were taller than I could see, and there was smoke coming out of the ground, and it was so cold. It was colder than I'd ever been in my entire life. And the pace, the people, and the cars, and everything was just overwhelming. So I knew fairly quickly that I needed to get out of this rat race, but I really had no financial way of doing it. When I left Jamaica, the Jamaican dollar was about $5 to $1 US, and it was depreciating rapidly because they were seeking to attract foreign businesses to the country. The exchange rate right now is 100 to 1, and much of that depreciation took place within a 3-year period after I left home. So I knew reasonably well that my parents would not be able to find a foreign exchange to finance a college career for me. Well, fortunately for me, and for many of you, athletics gave me an opportunity to go to college and get my start. I was fortunate to receive a tennis scholarship, so I moved down to Maryland. I remember I packed all my belongings, everything that I owned, into my little white Toyota, and I drove down I-95. After college, I wanted to be a writer. I was a journalism major, and I planned to write for a major paper in Washington, D.C. So I started off with sports information. I was going to get that experience. But then along came opportunity. But it didn't look like opportunity. It came cloaked. It was disguised as compliance work. And it was tedious compliance work, rebuilding systems at my institution after a major infraction. So of course I was not going to do that. I was going to be a writer, and I was going to write for a major college paper. I had to be convinced. Fortunately for me, my mentors took the time to try to convince me. And so I said, okay, very grudgingly, I said, okay, fine, I can do this for a year or two. Well, that moment, that decision launched my career in intercollegiate athletics. So I spent a few more years at my alma mater. I moved up to assistant director of athletics for internal operations, and I was working on my MBA at night. Then in 1997, after I finished my master's degree, I saw an opportunity at the NCAS national office in Kansas City. So let's recap. Jamaican girl, I'm on the beach, I'm chilling, then I wake up, I'm in New York, then I'm in Maryland, but Kansas. So smack in the middle of Tornado Alley. I go out there. I don't know anyone. I'm away from everyone and everything that I have known. I was comfortable. I was well regarded at my university. I was moving up. So why would you leave? Why would you make that change? Well, I was interested in having the opportunity to have impact on a national level, and I wanted further growth and learning opportunities. So again, I jumped in my car. This time it was a green Dodge Stealth, and I drove west. And I lived there in constant fear of a tornado. It was terrifying, but that was the best decision, one of the best decisions I would say of my life. So I spent my early years in academic and membership affairs. I was an interpretive specialist, one of those people that you would call on the phone if you had questions about those many NCAA rules. Eventually, I became a director, overseeing the entire interpretations area and supervising all of the staff that handled interpret issues for all 3 divisions. I spent 7 years of new opportunities. I decided to complete another goal that I set for myself, and I started law school at night. So I was working full-time, I was traveling a bit, and I was in class every single night of the week, 5 nights a week. The first year was just a little bit hellish, to say the least, but I persevered. So I got married a couple years before that, and at the end of my first year of law school, discovered I was pregnant with twins. What do you do? I kept plugging on. So my girls were born in November of that year. And, to be honest, managing law school, work, babies is hard. But I learned something about myself and about my ability to persevere. So midway through law school, I made a lateral move at the NCAA into the governance area. And this was a move that I thought would give me an opportunity to have a greater impact in policy decisions. I was right about that opportunity, and I grew professionally. So one of my goals is to never stop growing, never stop preparing for the next opportunity. So in 2009, I decided to explore an interest that was meaningful to me and develop an area at the national office that I thought was an area for growth in the future. So I wrote a proposal. to consolidate everything that we were doing, all of our efforts and interactions with international colleagues, and I make the argument that the world was so rapidly changing that the NCAS National Office had to engage internationally and had to build those relationships that would be beneficial in the future. I told them higher education was going global. Well, the reaction was lukewarm, to say the least. They said, well, they're not like us, and we're better, our system is better, and you don't need to be spending time on international stuff, we've got enough stuff to do here. But then they started to say, well, our institutions, they do want to attract international student athletes, and the workforce is global. Maybe there's a small role. I stuck my foot right in that open door, and I started my work as the Director of Governance and International Affairs. So I served as the NCAA liaison to the NCAA Executive Committee. I managed association-wide issues, and I was the point person on international issues. In 2011, I was elected as Vice President of the United States International University Sport Federation. Later that year, during the World University Games in Shenzhen, China, I was elected as Vice President for the Pan American University Sport Federation, and also appointed to serve on the International University Sport Federation Commission on the Development of University Sport around the world. As Luan mentioned, I served as Deputy Head of Delegation for Team USA at World University Games in Russia and in Kazan. And I've had the opportunity to participate in discussions and deliver presentations all over the world. My kids are 11 now, and it's a constant challenge for me to balance life and work issues, a challenge that you probably will face in your careers as well. I find myself confronting really a wide variety of issues every day, from fundraising challenges to ensuring that we are complying with state and federal guidelines, organizational sustainability, staff issues, and of course, 7th grade math. I get the question all the time, how do we do it all? How do you fit it all in? I should point out, by the way, my male colleagues never ever get that question. The expectation is in order for me to be a successful professional and a parent, that I have to have some superability. Well, what I do have is a strong belief that my best is good enough. And even on those days when I can't give my absolute best, it's still good enough. I know how to persevere. So even when things aren't looking the way they should, I know that we can make it work, and I'm strengthened by the belief and the knowledge that others before me and others with me have blazed the trail. So let's talk a little bit about mentors. Mentors were critical for me in my professional growth and development. But very early in my career, I was unprepared. I did not know how to develop and cultivate mentors. I was fortunate in a sense because I started my career at my alma mater. So I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, and they were interested in making sure that I was able to do the things that were good for me. Well, when I left and I transitioned to the NCAA, I had to learn how to develop mentors, and I was good at it. There were few women in leadership roles at the NCAA. There were even fewer women of color. Now, that's not to say that your mentors must come from a specific demographic, and mine didn't. My first mentor at the NCAA was a white male. His name was Steve Maloney. Smart as a whip, knows everything about everything. He and I connected through tennis, actually. We used to play tennis at the local high school, and he encouraged me to take on challenges and to try to become more visible in the organization. Steve is still a friend and someone that I can turn to, and I have been fortunate to develop other friendships and mentorships, relationships along the way, but it is still very difficult. And there still are very few women and women of color in leadership roles that I can turn to and say, this is my issue. I'm going through this challenge. Consider this. And so I can get the feedback from someone who might be experiencing similar challenges. Some of the networking barriers that I recall during my career. First of all, the very first one is that I do not drink. Okay, I drink a little red wine, but not really. I don't really drink. And many of the so-called networking events were around alcohol. So I had to work around that. I had to find ways to engage that did not involve the bar. Maybe you don't have that problem. I don't know. Another barrier was my educational aspirations. So I was in law school 5 nights a week. So you don't want to go out on Saturday night after that. So I stopped getting the invitations to go out because everyone knew that I wouldn't go. So then I had to figure out other ways to foster those connections and to ensure that I was still being able to maintain those connections. Another barrier was family life and what that means and entails, especially still today for women. I remember so very clearly when I would travel on NCAA business, some of my male colleagues at the vice president level would say to me, oh, who's taking care of the kids? Now my ex-husband who was also at the NCA, who was at the same level I was as a director, never, ever, ever got that question when he traveled. One of the things that I reflected on as I prepared for this presentation, during that time in my life, most of the upper leadership at the NCA, they were male. And most of them, because of their financial situation, whatever the case may be, they had stay-at-home wives. And so, nothing's wrong with that. Absolutely nothing's wrong with that. But it gives an inaccurate perspective on what life-work balance really is. So how am I paying it forward? Well, I believe I have a duty to help others who are coming behind me. So if I'm in a position to help anyone in any way, then I will do it. If it's a call, if it's a note, if it's advice, conversation, if I can do it, then I will. It's important to me that I am a person who lives what I say. And my greatest value is not the things that I am able to accomplish personally. There's only so much I can do as one person. But it's how I can help others to accomplish their goals. Talk a little bit about challenges. When I came to the United States, I really didn't know much about its history of race relations and gender inequality. I learned very quickly that I would be judged by my gender and by the color of my skin. And the more layers that are added to that, the greater the biases I might face. So, for example, add to the fact that I am a first-generation immigrant to this country. I was not born here. Think about all the rhetoric that you're hearing in the news about immigrants. How many of those stereotypes could then possibly attach to me? Despite the struggles and the many victories that we've seen in the 1960s and 1970s, many of our experiences in this country are still colored by race and gender. And so the fight to be inclusive must ensure that those people who are historically unrepresented or underrepresented are engaged, they're sitting around the table, they're involved in the discussions, involved in the decision making, and part of the leadership for organizations. So the biggest challenge, I think, continues to be the numbers that you saw earlier today. The lack of women and the lack of women of color in leadership roles. I can't count the number of times during my 17-year career at the NCA that I was the only woman in the room and or the only person of color in the room. What happens when you are the only anything in the room? Well, number one, your voice is muted. Research has told us that in order for the perspective of any particular group to be consistently heard and appreciated, there needs to be a critical mass in the room. What number makes a critical mass? Well, some people say a third. Some people say, well, closer to 50%. But in any event, having one or two women, one or two people of color in the room certainly doesn't meet that. Another outcome of being the only person in the room is that then you are looked at as the sole voice or the representative of that demographic. And of course, I can give my perspective, but there is great danger in being the sole voice. I'll give you a real-life example of this challenge. Right now, I'm the only woman downstairs in my office. Some of my grad assistants from D17, they've heard me go off on gender issues, and sometimes maybe I'm over the top, I know it. But I am the only perspective, and so I have to constantly, or I believe I have to constantly be that foghorn. I want to talk a little bit about international women in sport. Recently, TIE conducted research on the opportunities for women in leadership positions internationally and concluded that the numbers are very small. I have lived that experience in international university sport from 2011 to 2015 when I served as vice president and first vice president of the Pan American University Sport Federation. I was the only woman in the room, only woman on the executive board. During that period, I also served as a representative from the Pan American region to the International University Sport Federation. This is similar to an appointment to serve on the IOC. I was one of 6 women on that 28-person body. Very rarely did the women speak out on any issues in any of the discussions. Why? Because there were so few of us. There was no critical mass. I had the opportunity to attend the General Assembly of the European University Sport Association. It was an election assembly. Out of the 18-member body that was elected, there was 1 woman and no minority groups. So according to the research, and I quote, we knew anecdotally that women were poorly represented, but the lack of women in the international federations was astounding. One of the questions you may ask is, well, why is this the case? Where does the problem lie? certainly the governing bodies have to do more. But is there more of a systemic issue? I'll give you a quick story. The recent International University Sports General Assembly in Switzerland last year, there were only 7 women on the ballot out of 170 member countries. 6 of them were elected. Good percentage, but there were only 7 out of 170. That means that women are not getting the support they need in their home countries in order to aspire to these positions, most of which are voluntary. Opportunities that are freely given to men are many times hard to come by for women, and if you add to that the fact that in many instances women continue to be primary caregivers, sometimes sole caregivers, the support of those around them becomes so important in ensuring that opportunities are not only available, but are truly accessible. If I had to sum up the barriers to success for women of color in sport leadership, I would say, number 1, we are still living in a misogynistic society. The casual comments that are bantered around women are more than just locker room talk. They damage the image of women everywhere. We still struggle, number 2, with subconscious bias that is associated with racial stereotyping. I think someone mentioned this earlier about the networks. When someone picks up the phone and asks, who do you know that would be good for this position, a lot of times women of color are not in those networks. Rigid and unforgiving work schedules. Because we are still functioning in this kind of halfway system where women are in the workforce in much greater numbers, but we are still considered the primary caregivers in families, that responsibility has not been shared equally. So sometimes the typical way a man will manage his work schedule will be very different from the way a woman will have to manage her work schedule. And then 5th, I would say that homogeneous hiring continues. We hire people who look like us, or at least are the same gender, so it becomes a self-perpetuating problem. If I could go back in time 20 years, what advice would I give to myself? Well, 20 years, even 30 or 35 years. I think there's a great song that I like. It's by a group called Little Mix, and it's entitled Little Me. And the words really resonate with me because I was that girl. Just one part of the song. It says, I wish I knew back then what I know now. Wish I could somehow go back in time and maybe listen to my own advice. I'd tell her to speak up, tell her to shout out, talk a bit louder, be a bit prouder, tell her she's beautiful, wonderful, everything she doesn't see. Throughout my career in sports as a woman of color, I have had to learn to find my voice. I'm still learning that, even now, as sometimes I find myself in positions where I need to speak up, and sometimes it is not comfortable. During my early years at the NCAS, I listened a lot. Sometimes I didn't speak when I needed to. You don't want to be that person, but there comes a time when silence is betrayal. I'll finish with a quick story on finding your voice. At the NCAA maybe 5 years ago, we were doing this professional development session on leadership, and it involved people from about 4 or 5 different groups. So there were about 150 people in the room. A clip from the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati was used. Most of you are too young. That sitcom was aired in the 1980s. And when you look back at that show today, it was probably one of the most sexist sitcoms that has ever shown. And so here we are, we're discussing this sitcom, and in this show, there's open dialogue and innuendos about women's bodies, about women's breasts, and I mean, true, we're still talking about that today, but it was probably one of the most sexist sitcoms ever. So we watched the clip, and then we're asking questions about leadership and displayed by the various characters. But the giant elephant in the room was that piece was so disrespectful to women. No one said anything. People were answering the questions. There were 4 NCAA vice presidents were in the room. No one said anything. They got to my group, and by that time, maybe I no longer gave her ass behind. I mean, excuse the expression, but I was tired. So I said, I can't answer these questions. This piece that you showed is so very offensive. Once I said that, others started chiming in. They were uncomfortable, but they were afraid to say anything. Once someone spoke, then they were able to find their voices. But you see the risk and the danger of being the only one, the danger of being the sole voice. And I think this is the current state of affairs for most women of color in leadership roles.